Welcome to the College Football Prop Show presented by LineStar. I'm Shannon Sommerville with your top college football player prop bets for Week 7. We've got some great games on the slate today. I'll get into that. But first, our picks are available on Underdog, Sleeper, CHALKBOARD, Parlay Play, and if you don't have those apps, you can download them, but use the promo code LineStar so you can get a nice deposit match plus 1 free month of the LineStar app. The LineStar app is something I'll be referencing throughout this video. The tool that I'm using is called the Props AI tool. It compares LineStar's projections to what's out there in the prop market, so that's the tool that I'll be referencing throughout this video. Let's quickly recap last week and then get into the awesome slate of games that is Week 7. All right, last week we were 2-2 on our picks. The ones we got wrong, LaNorris Sellers, we took the under on it, 212.5 total yards for him. He finished with 217. And then the other one we got wrong was Desmond Reed, the running back for Pitt, who had an amazing game, but we took him over on the rushing yards, over 83.5, and he finished with 55. But he had 155 receiving yards in that game, so we just played the wrong angle there. Cam Ward cashed for us on the over 298.5 passing yards. He finished with 437 in that shootout against Cal. What a thriller that was. And then the other one that I took was Auburn quarterback Peyton Thorne, over 13.5 rushing yards. He finished with 22. I was there for that one, so I saw that one live in action at Sanford Stadium, so that was an exciting one. And if anyone else is a Georgia Bulldog fan heading to Sanford Stadium, you got to hear Kirby Smart's challenge to fans to be a little bit louder for us there. I thought, when I was there that it was a little quieter than I remembered it being back in my college days. But all right, let's get into Week 7 and talk about these matchups. We've got some good ones. We've got Texas going up against Oklahoma. The Red River rivalry should be an awesome one. Then we've got OSU, Ohio State going up against Oregon. Both teams, Ohio State's ranked 2nd. Oregon is 3. Number 9, Ole Miss at 13, LSU. Number 4, Penn State at USC. Now, USC is not ranked, but I feel like they should be in the top 25. We've got Florida going up against number 8, Tennessee, and number 18, Kansas State going up against Colorado. So my question to everyone in the comments for today is, okay, if you had a sibling or brother, sister, whoever, somebody close in your family that was having a wedding today on the Saturday of Week 8, would you decline, or would you go and maybe just have your cell phone out checking scores the whole time? Because this is an amazing slate of games. Love this time of year too, in October, when you've also got some baseball going on as well. We're just coming up on the sports equinox when NBA gets started and all the major sports are rolling. So I got to know in the comments what you would do in that scenario, because it's a tricky one. Thankfully, I don't have a wedding to go to, so I'll be just watching all these games on the couch. But that being said, let's get into picks this week. All right, starting things off with Georgia Tech's quarterback Haynes King, over 241.5 passing yards. Now, I do have to have a little bit of a disclosure here. LineStar doesn't love the over here. In fact, the projection from LineStar is 202.7, but the consensus projection, which is basically an average of some of the other industry leaders, has 252. What I like about this one is that he's been over this 4 of the 6 games that he has played, and he's averaging about 240 per game, but going up against a UNC Tar Heels team that's 121st in pass yards allowed per game. They're on a 3-game losing streak, and they've really struggled in that span, specifically in their secondary. You just saw Pitt's quarterback Eli Holstein put up 381 passing yards. He also rushed for 76. And then for James Madison, Alonzo Barnett had 388. You're talking about King, who was just named to the top 25 for the Johnny Unitas Golden Arm Award. He has a .740 completion percentage, which ranks 3rd nationally. So while he's known for being a dual threat quarterback, he's got a great arm. And when you're looking at the game total in this one, which is something I always do, especially when I'm taking the over in props, what kind of a game environment are we looking at? We're looking at one of the highest game totals of the week at 60. UNC also plays at a very fast pace, so I think that will push Georgia Tech in this one as well. UNC plays the 9th fastest in terms of plays per game. I also, if you were going this direction, if you're like me and you like the over on the passing yards in this situation, I would consider pairing it with maybe one of his receivers like Malik Rutherford or Eric Singleton. As I mentioned, if you maybe don't like the passing yards, you could consider his rushing yards, which is something that LineStar does endorse the over on. The rush yards is at 30 8.5. You could also do over on fantasy points as well. So there's a couple different ways you can play Haynes King here, but I do like his spot going up against this UNC team that's a little deflated, 3 straight losses. How will they kind of bounce back? They seem a little bit deflated. So I like King's spot here in this ACC matchup. Next, I'm going to the SEC. The Gamecocks taking on Alabama, who are fresh off that loss to Vanderbilt last week. What a crazy finish that was. Well, we're going to the Gamecocks quarterback, LaNorris over on his rushing yards total. It's at 27.5. Because we just saw how Alabama struggled versus mobile quarterbacks. Well, let's talk about Sellers. LineStar's projection for him is 33 rushing yards. He's been over the 27.5 mark in 3 of 4 games, and he's averaging 50 rush yards per game. He's a very efficient runner, averaging almost 4 yards per carry. So I think he could get there again against this Bama team that struggled against mobile quarterbacks. We just saw it last week when they took on Diego Pavia, who had 56 rushing yards for Vanderbilt. Then a few weeks prior, we actually saw this problem a few weeks prior with South Florida's Byron Brown, who had 108 against them. Now, one thing to consider when you do take the over on rushing yards with a quarterback is you got to take into account the sacks. So you might lose some yardage there because, of course, that detracts from their rushing yards total. However, LaNorris was sacked 6 times against Ole Miss, and he still finished with 55 rushing yards. So I think he'll get there against this Alabama team. And what I've read from their defensive coaches this week is they're really going to challenge Sellers on the intermediate throw game. So I could see a scenario in which the Alabama defenders block all those intermediate throws and he's forced to just kind of take off to get a first down on his own. So I think he could get there on the over for just 27.5 rushing yards, which is less than half what he averages. So I like the spot here for LaNorris over 27.5 rushing yards. Now let's go to what might be the game of the week. We've got number 2 Ohio State going up against number 3 Oregon. Both teams a little bit untested, maybe Oregon a little more so than Ohio State. But in this matchup, I really like Ohio State and their run game going up against Oregon. So I'm going to go with Ohio State Buckeyes, Quinshon Judkins over 23.5 rush and receiving yards. LineStar's projection for Judkins is 89.4. Now, Oregon has an excellent secondary, but they've struggled at times this year defending the run. They're 99th in EPA per rush, 114th in power success rate. And remember that game they barely got past Boise State in week 2? And of course, that dynamic running back, Ashton Jeanty, who torched them for 200 total yards in that game. The key for Ohio State, I think, will be to keep it away from Dylan Gabriel and that Oregon offense and just kind of control the clock and really control the trenches in this one. So that's where I like the running game and specifically Judkins. The game total, 54.5, indicates a pretty high scoring affair. Ohio State 3.5 point road favorites. If they do end up getting out to an early lead, I could see them playing it a little bit more conservative in a hostile road environment, running the ball a little bit more and just really trying to control the trenches and the ground game in this one. So I like Quinshon Judkins over 73.5 rush and receiving yards. And lastly, rounding out my top 4 college football picks for week 7, we're going back to the ACC. Wake Forest quarterback Hank Bachmeier over 208.5 passing yards. Now, this line has moved down significantly. It opened at 213.5 passing yards. So I like the number that we're getting here at 208.5. LineStar's projection for Bachmeier is 260. He's been over that in 4 of 5 games this season, averaging 262.6 passing yards per game. He's a great passer, and he's going up against a Clemson defense that's allowing an average of 220 passing yards per game to opposing quarterbacks, which is 71st in the country. Also, they are 21-point underdogs at home. This has a high game total at 62. So what does that mean? They're going to have to be airing it out a lot in this one. So I like Bachmeier's total here over that 208.5 passing yards mark. Also, Wake Forest plays very fast, 14th in plays per game. So I absolutely think Hank Bachmeier will get there over 208.5 passing yards for Wake Forest. So those are my top 4 picks for college football week 7. Just to recap, Haynes King over 241.5 passing yards, LaNorris over 27.5 rushing yards, Quinshon Judkins over 23.5 rushing receiving, and Hank Bachmeier over 208.5 passing yards. And one more I do want to throw out to you guys. This is not one of my top 4 endorsements, but One that I was looking at was Avery Johnson, Kansas State quarterback, over on his rushing yards total. It's at 72.5, which is a little bit high considering he's averaging 64 rush yards per game. However, this is a spot that I've been targeting, basically quarterbacks rushing yards against Colorado, because 3 of 5 of them have over 75 rushing yards against Colorado. You had KJ Jefferson put up 76, Sawyer Robinson 82, Cam Miller 81. So it's not a bad spot to play. I figured I'd throw it out to you guys and let you guys make the decision there. Let me know what you think in the comments. And the question of the day, of course, is, would you decline an invitation to a wedding today for someone that was very close to you? Would you make them reschedule? That's, I guess, an option too. So let me know what you think in the comments. Again, a comment enters you into our prop bets contest. So if we go 4-0 on this flex ticket on Underdog, someone's taking home the winnings, and I'll announce that on the next show next time. So good luck in all of your prop betting endeavors. Again, if you have any locks for this week, whether it's in prop betting or if you got any underdogs you love, drop them in the comments. We're all trying to make some money this week, so let's go out there and do it. Good luck, everybody. We'll see you next time.